everybody. Welcome back to Very Visionary. I'm your host, Blake Jones. We have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Bryan Howard. Thank you for joining us, Bryan. He recently has authored this new book, The Vanguard Edge, which has been fantastic for me, eye-opening to see the importance of team building and communication and just organization when it comes to having an effective business model. And just a quick tidbit, I happened to read this right after I read Dr. Doreen Rivers' Brain to Bank, and I think that those two books really pair well together for someone that's starting their entrepreneurial journey or trying to scale a business they're already involved in. So without further ado, Mr. Bryan, thanks for joining me this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Blake.
Yes, it is my pleasure. And you're hailing from Jacksonville, Florida, right?
Yes, beautiful and sunny today.
Right. Same over here in Phoenix. And so this book, I have not gotten into the online content yet, but just here, it is very concise and direct in at least your method to how you should successfully scale a business. And I'm just wanting to hear the background that went into this, because it's clear to see that this came not from theory, but from you putting things into practice. So how did you develop some of the models that are mentioned in here?
So I've been in human resources and human performance improvement for a long time, multiple decades, let's just put it that way. And so I've had a lot of experience leading teams, but also in helping business leaders build teams, whether that was through my own companies. I'm actually on my second entrepreneurial endeavor now with Mercury Performance Group, but I've also worked in some really large organizations across the United States and even some in Canada and Europe. So I've had the opportunity to build some really large teams and help business leaders in those organizations build teams as well, basically seeing what works and what doesn't work. And so the culmination of all of that was, hey, I can build a process that I can put into a short book where I can teach people how to build a team from start to finish, from foundation to even multipliers at the end, which we can talk about, and give them practical advice on how to do that, step-by-step guide. A lot of the business books that you see today are mostly theory, and they have a lot of great quotes that you can share on LinkedIn and get a lot of likes, but they're missing the how-to part. So I wanted to write a book that was all about how to, and bring my experience and the experience that I've had with other leaders into the book itself.
Very good. And so that team aspect I've learned is very important. We're not in an environment where one person can make things happen on their own. Now, with that being said, technology has given us a lot more capability. So maybe the dynamic and size of the team has changed, but still a team nonetheless. What goes into making sure that you are drafting the right people to your team? Because I've heard that it's even more difficult to get rid of team members than it is to bring them on. So
Yes.
What goes into that process?
It's a process where you have to start with understanding what you need and then work your way out from that. So a lot of companies now, they start with a job description, very simple HR process. You write a job description, you say, here's what I need. And then you post that job description and you go out and look for a person who matches it. Problem that most companies run into when they do things like that is they don't really capture the essence of what's required of the job. They sit down and make a list of tasks, and those tasks are what you would consider the skill that you would go after. Maybe it's being able to talk on the phone, or maybe it's being able to use Excel. And so they make a list of these tasks. But what they don't do is make a list of all the fundamental skills that people need in the job, like teamwork, collaboration, and the ability to work on a team. Those are all also pieces that need to be brought into the mix. So rather than writing just a standard job description, what I like to do with teams is say, if you could have the perfect person in this seat, what would they be able to do for you? And then we craft the job description based on that. So we think about what competencies would the person have, or skills, but also what personality attributes would you look for in a person as well. Often when we examine high-performing employees in a company, we see what the high performers are doing differently than the average performers in the company. And those high performers typically have things that fall into two buckets. One of those buckets is what we'll call the personality bucket, and the other one is what we'll call the process bucket, where the person has resources, tools, and tactics that they like to use to do the job better than average. Well, those items that fall into the personality bucket, they may or may not have an influence on the job performance. But if you look at enough people, you can start to see, okay, people with this type of personality do better in this role than others. And then you can start to hire for that. So basically the long and short of it is you really have to define what it is that you think will create success in the role, and then go out and look for the person that fits that. And don't settle. If you look long enough, you'll find them. If you pay enough, you'll find them. It's when people go out and say, I only have so much money to spend, or I'm going to settle at 60 or 70% of the skills and just hire a warm body. Those are the people that build weak teams.
Yeah, you pay for what you get, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's an investment at the end of the day. You have to invest in your team as much as you invest in your company and invest in yourself. It's all investment. So when I read your book, to me, having an athletic background, it reminds me a lot about what it takes to have success within the sports realm. I was wondering if you have any background in sports, or if that has any play, or if it just is a coincidence of how similar those seem.
A little bit of both. So I don't want to turn into Al Bundy from Married with Children here, but I played a little sports when I was younger. No, nothing more than high school.
Mm.
But I did learn a lot of discipline from playing sports, and also from being in martial arts for a period of time. And so some of that you see in this book. In one of the chapters, as a matter of fact, I used the Leicester City Football Club as an example of how metrics can work to help make a team successful. For anybody that's seen Ted Lasso on Apple TV, the Leicester City Football Club parallels the story of Ted Lasso. Now, I don't know if that was intentional, or I don't know how those two are connected, or if they're connected, but the same thing. Put together a team of underdogs, people who there's no way they should have won a championship, and hired a coach who really never even played at the Premier League level in soccer or football. He put together a team basically using Vanguard principles and the types of tools that we talk about in the metrics chapter in the book, and then won a Premier League championship in 2 years, which is quite remarkable. So the tenets that are in this book, the 6 M's, they'll work for corporations, they'll work for entrepreneurs, small businesses, sports teams, not-for-profits, boards, basically anywhere you have a team, the principles in this book will work. Now, it's written for more of a business and corporate audience, but it works anywhere there's a team. I like it, Michael Jordan says, talent wins games, teams win championships.
Yeah.
So I think it's universal.
Yeah, I agree. And what are the 6 M's?
So it starts with mindset, and these are foundational. So I always tell people that you have to do these in order. So start with the very first one and master that one, and then move to the next. So the first one is mindset. Next one is mission. So all about what direction the company is heading in. The next one is model. So you're going to build a company and build a model that will get you where you want to go for that. And once you have the right mindset, the right mission, and the right model, you have to tell people about it. So the next M is messaging. And then final M in this piece of the puzzle is metrics, which I just mentioned a moment ago. And so you got to have a growth mindset, and you have to have a good mission, and you have to have great team members. But in order to hold them accountable, they need to know what good looks like. So that's where the 5th chapter comes in, the metrics chapter. And then the final M is actually a bonus chapter. You could actually create a Vanguard team with only the first 5 chapters. But the 6th chapter is all about multipliers. And so once you have a business, how can you quote unquote 10x your business? How can you get extra oomph without added expense? And so there's a lot of multipliers in there, examples of how you can have joint ventures, partnerships, do joint marketing, those types of things that will help you multiply your business. So I consider that kind of a bonus M at the end, but once you get the first 5 mastered, that one will really take your business to new levels.
Yeah, that makes sense. The multiplier is not essential, but you get to a point where that's certainly going to be desirable. And as you illustrate those 6 M's, I see them in a circle, because you get to that 6th one, and the multiplier is going to rely a lot on the mindset, right?
Right.
Right. And I feel that I've been developing my mindset over the past year or so. What do you feel it takes for someone to get into the proper mindset that they can actually apply these principles that you list out through the Vanguard Edge?
I start every chapter with a story about a well-known company, and I did that on purpose. From several different industries, I did that on purpose too. And the story illustrates that what I describe in each chapter can be done. So, in other words, at the beginning, the first story is about BlackBerry. Most people think BlackBerry is a dead company. And as a matter of fact, if you say the word BlackBerry, people say, "Oh yeah, their phone, they're gone.
Hmm.
They're not even in business anymore." But the reality is they had a growth mindset. And so not only are they in business, but they're doing phenomenally well. And so you really just have to believe. And the best way to believe is to look out into the world and see examples of where other people have done it, especially if you can find local examples of people who you know or people who you admire who have also done it, and then use that example to help grow your mindset. It's really easy to sit back and say, yeah, but I'm not good at math, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there's a way around that. And so you can always learn something.
Hmm.
Even all behaviors are learned. And so once you believe that by watching other people do it, then I think it's easier for you to do it as well.
Hmm.
I know you're doing that now with some of the networking that you're doing as you're getting in rooms with people who have a growth mindset. And
Hmm.
as you see them succeed, it starts to rub off on you and you start to think, okay, I think I can do this too.
Yep, you're exactly right. I see people like yourself that have already done it enough that they found the formula to it, and being able to see the origin of where people start also is very empowering for me, because we can all look at Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and think of just how grand of a task it may be to try to build up to that level. But I do believe that most of those people we look towards probably start at a similar spot that you've put into this book here. So being able to deconstruct that process, kind of reverse engineer it, is really important. And then as I go through your book, I question how somebody could fail in their endeavors if they really follow these steps and put in the time and build the team properly. It's very well illustrated, and I'm looking at the back here where you list the 5 G's of success, and I wanted to make sure I mentioned those: grit, growth, gratitude, generosity, and grace. And those are very, I would say, humble labels to a leader, but at the same time, very important and very straightforward. Those are all things that I've felt I've embodied for quite some time now. And you talk about how transferable these skills are. And when it comes to the business piece of things, I've talked with our friend Justin Breen about this more than once, that you take the time to understand the correlation between all of your interactions and how they are similar in the structure. So one being the family structure, and how having that strong family nucleus, as well as having good communication within your family, and being together in your mission as a family, that gives you the opportunity to put these into practice in the business setting as well. So the grace portion and the gratitude portion of that, I think, have to be highlighted in that family sense as well when you're talking about the big picture of all of this.
I agree. So those 5 G's came from my personal life, and those are my personal values that I live by every day. And of course, those spill over into my professional life as well. I really have a tale of two lives, basically. In my first life, I was a really hard charging, take no prisoners kind of guy, and worked in operations. Was at the top of the companies that I worked in as far as operating goes, and then even opened my own business in partnership with one of the owners of a business I worked for. I had a bad marriage, had spent all my time working, didn't really think much about those 5 G's at all. Although I would say I was pretty gritty, but not in a good way. And 2010, not that long ago, I found myself flat on my back in the hospital having triple bypass surgery, and almost died because of who I was and how I was, how I ate, I smoked, I had bad relationships, lots of stress, burned the candle at both ends all the time. And so when I came out of that, and obviously I'm still here, thankfully. So when I came out of that, I thought I have to make some real changes. I lost my business while I was recovering, so went back into the corporate world, and I went back with a whole different attitude, and that's where the 5 Gs came from.
Mhm.
And so, yes, from a place of humility, it gives you a totally different perspective when you realize that it can end literally any moment. And so now I spend my days living those values, so that if that moment does come, I can go out proudly.
Yeah, that's very important. Thank you for sharing that. I think that holds value in that story just because you're not the only one that's gone through that, right? Especially in
Mhm.
this entrepreneurial space, we hear that time and time again, pouring your heart and soul into the business and working hard, which is an important part of it, but giving yourself the grace and showing the gratitude towards the things outside of the business and being thankful for the opportunity to take care of your body and being a healthy body and a healthy mind is so important and easy to lose track of as we prioritize these aspects within the business setting. And again, why it's so important to bring it into our personal lives and our everyday lives so that that doesn't slip away from us, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you said it a little while ago, giving yourself grace is probably one of the most important parts because, and we talk about this a little bit in the book, but the idea is that innovation is typically a byproduct of failure, not the other way around. And so if you're going to succeed, you're probably going to fail quite a bit along the way. And if you beat yourself up every time you fail, then you'll end up on your back in the hospital like I did. So being able to give yourself grace for those failures and see the opportunity they bring is a really important part of personal growth, but also in growing a team, especially a Vanguard team.
Just by talking with you and looking at you now, clearly you've changed a lot since that experience in terms of your self-care and how you make sure that you're ready to perform. What have you changed?
So I'll give myself some grace here and say that I was doing pretty good until COVID hit, and then during COVID, I spent a lot of time at home, and unfortunately, at home there's a lot of food and wine. I gained a bunch of weight, and I'm working on losing that weight now. So I gained about 85 pounds during COVID, which for somebody who's been through what I went through, that was pretty stupid. I'm giving myself some grace and spending time now each morning doing some exercise and starting my day off correctly. And the weight's coming off and the clothes are getting smaller. So yay for that. And I'm working towards being the person that I want to be.
That's important. Working towards it. We're always working towards it, right?
Absolutely.
It's an everlasting process. And as hard as we work, we'll never finish it. We'll never finish it. But I'm glad you give yourself that grace because, again, you're not the only one that has that chapter in their story, right? And I was in the hospital setting during COVID and I wasn't taking care of myself properly, even as I tried to educate other people on how to do that. So, we sometimes just have to look in the mirror and make sure we're taking our own advice too, because we can read books and educate ourselves and be prepared. But if you don't put it into practice, then it doesn't really do anything for us, right?
I agree. And I can promise you that I ask my team at Mercury Performance Group to hold me accountable every day to fostering a Vanguard team in our own organization. I know it's everybody always talks about the house painter has the ugliest house on the block, and the shoe cobbler kids have the worst shoes in school. I try not to do that. This is near and dear to my heart, so I want to make sure we're successful as a Vanguard team as well. So I practice what I preach.
Yep, and I see that from you. I definitely do. So with Mercury Performance Group, what is it that you all provide there?
Broken down in its most simple, we help businesses solve people problems. And so we know that people want to, or businesses, I would say, want to hit a certain goal. Maybe it's a revenue goal or a profit goal or number of units sold or customer service scores or something along those lines. And we know that a lot of times the thing that stands in the way are people problems. Some of them are team issues. Sometimes it's retention. Sometimes it's something as simple as human resources compliance issues. And so we go into companies and diagnose problems, provide solutions for those problems, both efficiently and effectively, and either put some money in the pockets of those companies or help them save money. Mostly what we do is about growing efficiency and profit or cost avoidance in some cases, where I make the joke all the time is we're like the FBI when it comes to HR compliance. Is our job is to keep the bomb from going off so that you don't get the fine. So a lot of times the savings from those types of things are really more about cost avoidance. For companies that have had $1 million fines, they understand that spending $50 or even $100,000 to prevent $1 million fine is a very good investment.
Recognizing the hazard before the fire gets started, right?
Yes, we like customers who are proactive, but we do a lot of work with customers who are reactive, because that's generally when we get the phone call is it's broken, help me fix it.
And I've just in the last year finally thoroughly understood the importance of data and collecting the data, processing the data, understanding it. And I think that a lot of the issues that companies face, they struggle to identify and articulate exactly what it is. So it seems like what your group does is they turn that into data through these assessment tools and through these maps of strategy, and then it gets placed into an algorithm essentially so that you have a structure to follow, and it's easier to address what it is that's going on. And I think sometimes it's hard to really pinpoint where an issue is, and you might see revenue taking a hit or productivity taking a hit, and you might not always understand exactly why it's happening, right?
One of my good friends, Mike Koenig's, he always talks about is you're unique, but your problems are not. I love that saying because it fits so well with what we do. Is we see the same problems over and over and over again. So when we go into a company, a lot of times what feels like a unique circumstance or problem to them is really something that happens to all companies at some point in their lifetime. And so we're well equipped to identify those things more quickly than the company can, because one, we're slightly removed from it so we can see it without emotion, and two, we've seen it so many times before that it's really just a variation on a theme. We know how to put together a custom solution for them that fits the unique qualities of their companies while also solving the problem quickly. It's a nice vantage point for us, and it really helps the customer get where they want to be faster if they trust us with that.
Yeah, trust is a big portion. I was actually going to ask, do you ever run into the issue where someone's asking you for the help, but then the suggestions that you give them or the things that you may be asking them to change, they're not as open or adaptable?
It happens all the time, and we do our best to encourage people to follow the path that we give them, but we, of course, can't make them do that. And so in cases where we give advice and it's not followed, then that's usually the end of that part of the engagement. But most of our customers don't do that. Most of our customers will say, we know that you know what's best, and we want you to help us implement it. And so we do. Even though we're a workforce consultancy, we're not the type of consultant that comes in and identifies a problem and then tells you, here's the problem we found. Good luck fixing it, or here's a white paper on how you can fix this, and then we leave. We actually stick around, help the company solve the problem, act as a partner to them, and part of what we deliver at the end of every engagement, and you'll see that throughout the Vanguard book too, is we give companies ways to sustain the results. In other words, we don't want you trapped having Mercury Performance Group as a constant. We want you to have the opportunity to do these things on your own. So not only do we teach you how to solve the problem, but we teach you how to audit against that and maintain that performance for the long term. And then, of course, we like it when they invite us back to solve other problems in the organization, but we don't want to keep coming back for the same one over and over again, because we want to teach them how to do it themselves.
Yeah, and that's a great model to have, because whether we want it to happen or not, there will be more problems that arise.
Absolutely.
So,
One of the things we're most proud of at Mercury is that every client who has signed a statement of work with us has signed at least one more. So no one and done clients here. Everybody has found value in what we did and hired us to do more.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks volumes, and I'm not surprised just in speaking with you and your demeanor and how you present your thoughts and even how you are able to put them into a book. It's clear that you yourself are a leader, but you also, again, we go back to the humility. Maybe you haven't always been this humble. Maybe it was the events that you had to go through and learn. We all have those times of growth. Do you think that this is the new Bryan that we're looking at, that is able to act in this manner and project this feeling of safety and also?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And if you go back and Bryan, take one, pre-heart surgery, I had friends who I got along with really well, and I was very successful in business. I just didn't go about it the right way, and so it wasn't healthy for me. And I did step on a lot of toes on the way up the corporate ladder. I'm sure there are people in those days that don't like me very much, and I'm sorry, I can't fix the past, right? All I can do is be a better person going forward. So yes, this is the new Bryan. And if you talk to me again tomorrow, Blake, that'll also be the new Bryan. And then the day after that'll be the new Bryan again, because much like I try to tell people with teams in the book, we're all a work in progress, and it's not something you ever really finish. But if you enjoy the journey, which I do, then I think it's well worth it. So yes, looking forward to a new Bryan every day, hopefully a better one, at least incrementally so.
Definitely. And then before you know it, that incremental growth turns into exponential. But like you said, it starts with the mindset, and that's certainly there. And I thank you for showing us what it takes to develop that mindset and maintain the mindset. And, hopefully we don't all have to go through something traumatic or dramatic to get ourselves into that headspace, but that is often the case. And life is going to be full of, negative sides and twists and turns. So the least we can do is try to make those our opportunities for learning and growth.
I agree. And feel free to use the first part of the first half of my journey as a cautionary tale. You could definitely avoid doing it that way. You'll be much better off. So the 5 Gs is really the way to go.
Yeah, and thank you for clarifying that, because it can be easy to overlook. I see it all the time on there's these influencers and YouTubers that, they've got to where they wanted to get to, and their advice is do it my way, even though they fell on their face so many times and had to file for bankruptcy or ruin their families. And it's really up to those people to let everyone else know that I got here that way, but you don't have to do that. And I would rather you not do that, because again, roll it back, the family and the foundation and you as an individual, all that's more important at the end of the day and needs to be prioritized as you take on all these other roles, right?
Yes, it's funny. I'll say it this way, and you might giggle a little bit because it is kind of elementary. But if you're in a kitchen with a group of kids and one of the kids touches the hot burner, and it burns them, if every other kid in the room also goes and touches the burner, no learning is happening, right? So I want to be the kid that watches the kid touch the burner from now on and says, "Hey, I'm not going to do that. That looked like it was painful." And so every day, yes, I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and I read and I listen to people, and I'm members of a network like Brepic, where I can come in and hear some of those cautionary tales and hear better ways to do things, so that I don't have to struggle as much. There's plenty of people who have struggled before me, and that's just as much of as standing on the shoulders of giants as celebrating the successes is also avoiding the failures from people in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I agree with you. Don't touch a burner if someone already did it for you.
Right, right. Learn from somebody else's pain, learn from somebody else's journey, and then fall in love with your own journey, right? I'm glad that I ran into you right when this book was being launched. Everyone needs to know, this is a new book that Bryan has released, the Vanguard Edge. And he was a little bit nervous at first when it was coming out. And I wanted to make sure that he got the support he needed. And as I went through this book, I was like, what are you nervous about? This is fantastic. You did a really good job. And I just wondered, between you coming up with all the acronyms and the assessment tools and the processes, did you do that after you decided you were going to write a book, or did you already have this in place and then you decided you wanted to make it accessible to the public?
It's a mix of both. So there is a little bit of branding that goes on when you write a book. So you take some of these tools that you've developed in the past and you say, how do they fit into this framework?
Mhm.
And the Vanguard Edge, the Vanguard name comes from an assessment that you take in the very beginning of the book. So
Mhm.
you buy the book, you start reading it. One of the first things it says is to go to the website and take the mindset and strength evaluation tool, or MSET, what I call it, just because it's easier to say. When you take that tool, you take it from the viewpoint of your team. So most of the statements that you're rating in it say my team this or my team that. And so you go through and you rate all of the statements in the assessment, and then it gives you a score, which plots you on a 4-quadrant map. And the upper right-hand quadrant of that map is the Vanguard quadrant, and that's where you want to be. And so there's 3 other quadrants that have different characteristics than the Vanguard. For example, the bottom right-hand corner is the monolith quadrant. And monoliths are people who don't like to change, but they are a strong team. So they do a good job of doing the things that they do. They do them well as a team, but they're very fixed in their mindset. They don't want to grow in that regard. So that's one of the 4 quadrants. And of course, the other 2, upper left is believers, and the bottom left is actually divided into 2 different labels. One we like to call hibernators, and these are people who could emerge from that quadrant any day with the right support. And then the other are called resistors. And although those people can be saved, often they're very hard to convert from the bottom part of that quadrant into any of the others. So sometimes it's better if those people move on. But the idea is to take the assessment and then go through it. Well, I didn't have names for those quadrants, to get back to your question. I just knew that I had these 4 different types of teams that we had identified. And so we had to brand them in some way. And that's where we came up with the Vanguard branding. And then, of course, that follows throughout the book. So were they called the same thing? No, but yes, in many ways they existed in some form or fashion.
Nice. So I can assume that even you benefited from putting this into the book format then,
Of course.
being able to further articulate and illustrate what it is you're actually providing for people, huh?
Yes, the best way to learn is to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And writing a book is definitely the pinnacle of that, because
Mm-hmm.
you have to get the words on the page. And as some people would say, the right words in the right order to get your point across. And the book is 150-ish pages. The website that you mentioned a little while ago that you can find the web link to in the book, it has at least that much information or more. And then all of the assessments that you mentioned and the tools, and all of those are no additional cost. You just get it with the cost of the book.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. What's your Kolbe index score?
I'm a 3-3-10-2 quick start.
A 3-3-10-2. I'm a 3-2-8-8. But
That 8-8 is nice.
yeah, it's I'm growing into it.
I have
The
I have a
10
lot of
quick
people
start.
around me. I have a lot of people around me to support my 2.
Mm, yeah, and that's important, right? And that's just one of a handful of assessments that you mentioned in the Vanguard Edge. And it's one that I've grown to appreciate and understand. And I feel like with all these assessments, if somebody feels so inclined to take them, understand that it's just a way for you to better understand yourself, right? And I was kind of nervous about the result or score I would get initially. And then once you start going through it and really understanding the purpose behind it, there's no negative result in it. It's just you being able to further apply all of your strengths and support your weaknesses, right?
Yes. The nice thing about it too is as a quick start in Kolbe, you start to realize really quick that you're cut a little bit different, cut from a different cloth than other people. And you're an 8, so you get it. A lot of the things that the Kolbe identified for me were at different points in my life felt like a bad diagnosis, like I had ADD, and that was a bad thing, right? That I was somebody who loved to start projects and had a hard time finishing them. Like that was a bad thing. And then I come to find out from Kolbe that, oh no, it's because I'm a visionary. Finishing things is not my strength, but coming up with new ideas, that's my strength. So if you ask my wife, she'll tell you I love hobbies. And once I do it once, I never master them. I just do it once and I say, okay, I did it. And then once I did it, I'm happy with what happened. So
Yeah.
lots of that totally explained it when I took Kolbe and understood that I was a 10 quick start. Then it really all started making sense. And funny enough, even in the book I talk about this. If you have your entire team take the Kolbe, I also mentioned Gallup Strength Finders and Myers Briggs, and then I offer a few assessments in there too, an interactive preference assessment and a cohesion assessment, in addition to the mindset assessment I talked about at the beginning. If you take all of those and you map out all of your people, remember at the beginning of this conversation, we were talking about how do you build the team? How do you know who to have on your team? If you have all of this information and you really know your team beyond just what tasks they've done in their work life, but you actually know who they are from a personality point of view, then you can start to build teams that complement each other in all the best ways. Because I know when we're on calls on the Brepic network, there's a lot of quick starts in the room, and not a lot of fact finders or people doing execution. And so it's sometimes you get to hear what you sound like to other people just by listening to all the quick starts. So it's good to have a balance. And in the book, we talk about how to develop a purposeful balance on your team so that all of those gaps are covered and you can play to everyone's strengths.
Again, just bringing it back into data and figuring out where you can fill in the holes, right? And I'm a high quick start, high implementer, but also low in follow through. So that requires us to find I guess a COO in the corporate setting you would probably refer to, but that operator, the implementer, the person that's going to provide the structure of the vision that you've been able to craft within your own mind. And you bring it to fruition and it's on the table, but somebody else kind of needs to carry it along oftentimes, right?
Absolutely. And I have two of those in Mercury Performance Group. And then I'm also blessed that my wife is quite the implementer as well. So we have some really interesting dinner time conversations about Mercury Performance Group, and she helps me stay in check when I get a little red hot. Then she'll say, "Hey, we have to implement this too. So how are you going to do that?" And then she'll talk me off the ledge a little bit on some ideas, which is good. I need that balance.
Yeah, that made my heart flutter hearing that, just because again, the family dynamic is so important, and having a healthy relationship can make the world of a difference when it comes to really anything we're trying to do, but especially when it comes to our professional life and our businesses, right?
Yes, today I'm celebrating her birthday, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
So happy
nice.
birthday, Erica, if you're watching this.
Happy birthday, Mrs. Howard. And I'll be celebrating my 4th anniversary coming up here. So,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. How long have you guys been married now?
So we got married in 2013, and we started dating in 2008. So we actually celebrate 2 anniversaries, one for dating and one for marriage.
Nice.
What's wrong with having additional celebrations?
Nothing at all. Mine, February 12th, we started dating. So we were doing that for a while, and then we're like, oh, it's too close to Valentine's Day. That's a lot. Kind of lump those in together there. And is your
Yeah,
wife, is she directly involved with Mercury Group, or is
she's not.
okay.
She's a support. No, my wife is an executive in financial services, and I worked in the banking space for quite some time as well. And so she's still there and works for TIAA, which is one of the largest retirement companies in the world. So she's been with them for quite a while now, going on 16 years, and loves her work. She's not involved. Maybe one day she will be, but again, I have that those dinner table conversations, and I'm very thankful at this point she doesn't send me invoices for her advising.
Right.
Maybe one day she will, but right now I get the benefit of all of her knowledge and implementer ability for free, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Although I guess technically she owns half of Mercury through
There
marriage,
it is.
but
Yeah.
yes.
She's just filling into the role naturally, right?
Yes. She's a great help.
Well, Bryan, I'm going to let you go here, fella. It's been such a pleasure. Everyone listening, if you have any interest in improving your business or starting a business, it all starts with a team, and you need a formula to make it happen correctly. So the Vanguard Edge, your 6-step method to an unparalleled team success by Mr. Bryan Howard here, is a fantastic place to start if you don't know where to get started. Even if you think you know where to get started, it's a good tool to have in your tool belt there. And I'll give a shout out to the BREPIC organization, because that's where I met Mr. Bryan here. And it has been such a blessing to get to know the people within this group. And I just thank you for being a part of this show and sharing your story with us, Bryan.
I enjoyed it. Appreciate you having me, Blake.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right. And this has been another episode of Very Visionary, and I hope you all enjoy our next one.